I'm Adam Simmons, Project Geospatial, and the host of the Geospatial Frontier. I want to welcome everyone to our next Decade GEOINT panel. Before we get started, it is my honor to introduce the moderator for this session, Keith Masback. Mr. Masback is the owner of Plum Run LLC, providing advisory and consulting services to leading-edge companies and government organizations working in geospatial intelligence and related fields. He also is an active early-stage investor. Keith is a member of the Federal Advisory Board of Orbital Insight, a member of the advisory boards of Hermeus and Anno.ai, and a strategic advisor to High Spec IQ, OmniSci, ICE-I, and 2 stealth startups. He is recognized as the Geospatial Ambassador of the Year at the 2019 Geospatial World Forum. Prior to founding Plum Run, Keith spent over a decade as the President and Chief Executive Officer of the United States Geospatial Intelligence Foundation, and over 20 years combined as an officer in the U.S. Army and as a government civilian employee, culminating as a member of the Defense Intelligence Senior Executive Service at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And now our moderator, Mr. Keith Masback, will introduce our panelists and start the discussion.
Well, thanks, Adam, so much for that very kind introduction. Thank you for producing the series. I think it's been fantastic, very helpful for the community. These are the types of discussions which we all feared would be tamped down or eliminated due to COVID. And you've actually created a platform along with some other organizations where we've actually, I could argue in some ways we've increased the level of communication between the government and industry. So thank you for doing your part, and thanks for having me today. I'm pretty excited about this. We're going to be talking about High Cadence GEOINT. Many of us saw this coming as we worked over the past decade or so. We saw the advent of commercial collection. We saw it growing. We saw the stimulus in new space. We saw the dollars flowing into that sector. And now we're having to do the so what about it. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to make it applicable to mission sets? How are we going to get it to the people who need it in time to make decisions or take action? And so we've got a couple of people who are absolutely integral to that today on the panel. The first is Mr. Pete Muend, the director of the Commercial Systems Program Office at the National Reconnaissance Office. So has a responsibility for leading the way in purchasing the commercial data that will come into the community. Major Ashley Daniel is an NGA source, and she is the High Cadence GEOINT lead there. Ms. Vicki Hainey is an NGA analysis, and she's just got a few things on her plate like working analysis, Tradecraft, and tools and workflows. But other than that, she's not busy. And finally, Dave Gauthier, a well-known, long-standing executive at NGA is engaged with the commercial sector, currently in the Source Commercial Data Services office and managing that engagement. So we really appreciate having this fantastic panel here today. I look forward to hearing from them. I look forward to your questions, so we can encourage some back and forth towards the latter part of the discussion. And I think, Pete, why don't you lead it off for us, please?
Yeah, please. Thank you, Keith. So I'm very pleased to partner with NGA on this panel and more broadly on this joint initiative to execute the mission of commercial imagery and imagery generally, GEOINT generally. And specifically as it's growing into the new capabilities as put forward by commercial industry in total, that being high cadence geospatial intelligence, really that supports mission needs. We all know that the need for commercial imagery is increasing. The GEOINT functional manager, the director of NGA, recently validated a new set of requirements for us, and that included a substantial addition and frankly exponential increase in the types of requirements that we would need to be satisfied in the future. And that's because, of course, their customers' requirements are changing. Our intel analysts, the warfighters, first responders, to name a few, they both need not only just high resolution imagery, but increasingly high revisit imagery as those capabilities come forward. And of course, it's not just for us to use, but it's for us to share, right? So the shareability of that imagery is also key, and all to monitor those fleeting, unpredictable targets, as well as other items like spectral diversity to reveal unique signatures and those sort of other phenomenologies, all in total to give us better insights into the sort of hard problems that we have to deal with on a daily basis. regardless of the ultimate application, NRO is fully committed to utilizing commercial imagery and sources to the maximum extent practical in support of our defense and national security missions. In fact, we see commercial imagery as an increasingly integral part of our current and future GEOINT architecture. I think, in summary, the best bottom line set of words that we could say in terms of our overall approach is buying everywhere we can commercial imagery, and only building national systems where we need to. To tackle those unique and more difficult problems. So my office was founded in 2018, along with, I'll say, the revision of roles and responsibilities with commercial GEOINT and commercial imagery specifically. And since then, we awarded 2 operational contracts. One was, of course, with Maxar Digital Globe, kind of taking over the enhanced view scope of work, and the other one was focused more on large area daily revisit. But those were basically existing requirements and kind of, what we do to execute our mission every day. And while very, very important, frankly, it's been a wonderful partnership, not only between the NRO and NGA, but with the commercial providers as well. Really, that's the current state of affairs. Moving forward, and more responsive to NGA's validated requirements, I think there's a lot more opportunity. As I said, those requirements are dramatically increasing, not just with regard to the quality of the imagery, but almost more importantly with the capacity and revisit of that imagery. So a lot more opportunities there. So pursuant to that, in early 2019, we issued an unclassified request for information that really was meant to do a couple things. Obviously, improve our understanding of what the commercial industry could support, but also, and this is probably almost more important, serve as a demand signal for industry to kind of set the marker out there to say this is the sort of scope and scale of the imagery that we'll need to purchase in the future, so they can go out and make sure that they're in a position to satisfy those requirements, and not just satisfy them uniquely to the National Reconnaissance Office or the intelligence community or Department of Defense specifically, but satisfy them in a way that really resulted them continuing to be commercial companies as well. All right, we don't want to be their only customer. We know how to build systems uniquely tailored to our set of needs. We want these companies to be commercial companies, and as much as they may meet our needs, and our needs certainly may be stressing, we want them to do it in a way that they can be successful companies as well, and be able to offer their products to the entire world of GEOINT consumers. So as I said, we did that RFI, and that was back in January of 2019. And subsequent to that, obviously, because we didn't just want to take what we learned from the RFI at face value, we established a set of study contracts with some of the I'll say the more promising and more interesting potential suppliers. And that was and that actually we learned a tremendous amount from that. It was focused on not only modeling and simulation and trying to understand exactly what they could bring to bear, but also doing NIRS assessments during formal NIRS and image quality evaluations, so we could understand not just what the commercial industry was telling us that they could provide, but have some validation of that on our end. Validation of not only what they could do today, and then through that modeling and simulation that I just mentioned, understand where they were going in the future and develop some confidence in that. So we certainly learned a number of things. One, there's a vibrant industry out there, an industry that we're poised to take advantage of, and increasingly so. It's a very heterogeneous set of systems out there that really, and this is where the trick comes in, and the potential for high cadence really comes in. It's not just about meeting those requirements with one vendor or one company. It's about how do we satisfy that in total across all the companies that can provide value, and then more importantly, and I'm sure some of the other folks on the call are going to talk to this, but how do we do that in a way with peak efficiency, right? How do we deconflict those taskings and decide what we want to ask the providers to take advantage of, and then have the architecture to be able to disseminate all that imagery and the sort of shareability and the licenses to enable that sharing, to get it to where it needs to be. So all that is really through, kind of what we realized through our RFI and our study contracts, but really we're heading headlong into a major source selection toward the end of this year. And that really is to meet the updated set of requirements that are coming out of the community and the department on behalf of, frankly, the entire FedCiv and government national security sector. And we're really excited about that. We do envision multiple awards, so we are going to be in a situation where we'll have lots of imagery from multiple suppliers all available to us, and we, working very closely together, have to decide exactly how we're going to use that. Let's see. I guess the only other thing I would really wrap up with is it's not just about commercial imagery and the commercial imagery providers providing their capabilities in a stovepipe. It truly is about having an integrated architecture and one in which the commercial providers can be used to kind of in and amongst all the other capabilities that we're able to bring to bear. And that really is almost the most difficult trick, to make sure that we can leverage all the assets that we have access to equally, and make sure we can use them to answer those hard problems that we have to tackle. So, Keith, back to you.
I appreciate that, Pete. I'll take the moderator's prerogative and say something here. I was able to learn firsthand during my time in the government, both working as an NGA executive at NRO headquarters and at a ground station, about the phenomenal teamwork that goes on between NGA and the NRO. And it does so in a way that most people never see. It's both on the requirements end and then on the operations end. And there are lots of public examples of the community not doing things well together. And I've always said, when I'm talking to people about the intelligence community, that is a little known example of where there's a daily engagement that just works in a fantastic way. And in fact, includes other parts of the community as well, because there's interdependency. So as we anticipated and were concerned and took a breath about this movement of commercial imagery requirements over to the NRO, it's great to see the way that you're leading the office and the engagement that you've created with NGA, and it's very public and it's very open, and I think it's diffused a lot of the concern. So, kudos.
Well, thank you for that. I would absolutely agree. It's certainly been one of the closest relationships, I think, in the intelligence community, one of the most productive. And frankly, I would also extend that to our industry partners. I think we work just in general very, very closely and very, very well with our industry, and that's how we really provide those capabilities to do the missions we have to.
Anyway, thanks again, Pete. Major Daniel, over to you, a perspective from NGA Source and what you're doing with High Cadence GEOINT.
Thanks, Keith. Good afternoon, everyone. Adam, thank you so much for setting up this panel, and Keith, to you for moderating. We're really excited to have the opportunity to discuss our program today. Like Keith said, I'm the lead for High Cadence GEOINT today. I'll describe the program, and then I'll focus on some of the collection management considerations, and then pass it off to Vicki to talk more specifically about some analytics. So like Pete said, over the next decade, we're going to have this huge increase in the number of commercial satellites on orbit. That's going to bring us higher revisit, resulting in what we call High Cadence GEOINT, or HCG. How we define HCG is a consumer-focused GEOINT over a target of interest at intra-hour rates. So think minutes here instead of hours. And when we talk about HCG, we're talking about encompassing the entire process, from tasking to automated analytic processing and dissemination. To leverage this tidal wave of data that we see, we're going to require advanced tools capable of performing collection planning, as well as automated analytic processing. Ideally, these tools will be able to do a coordinated collection across multiple commercial constellations, and also have the ability to conduct advanced analytics on those high cadence images that we'll be receiving. Ultimately, our end goal is to be able to deliver High Cadence GEOINT to an analyst workstation in minutes. And in order to do that, we're going to need dashboards and tools for the entire process, integrated into our workflow in a way that's going to enable our analysts to characterize activity at a target and perhaps tip further collection. The integration of this new commercial data is going to bring extraordinary capabilities, both to the intel community and to the warfighter, but with that also comes some really big challenges. First, we need to rethink how we're going to use and how we're going to integrate this new imagery. The amount of images we can task means we're going to have to look well beyond today's standardized processes and start developing sophisticated tools which will enable us to use this imagery in new and innovative ways. We're going to need to look left of tasking, and we have to consider, how do we characterize activity in a way that a user can define the periodicity that they need to answer their Intel question and to break down activity and objects from which you can run high cadence analytics. For example, an analyst attempting to characterize activity at an airfield might require collection at an intra-hour rate during specific times of day. However, another analyst might need to monitor car counts at a facility maybe 2 to 3 times a day, but over the course of weeks or even months. But more specifically, we need to know how the first part of that activity might take 5 minutes, and maybe the second part takes 10 minutes, and then the third part takes 5 minutes. We're going to need to express that in a user-friendly tool, which automatically calculates the sampling rate for them. This brings some big challenges for collection methodology due to the diversity of targets, the diversity of collection modes, as well as the data being provided by multiple sources, as Pete was referring to. So we ultimately need to translate this methodology into a tool which will allow us to task multiple vendors for high cadence collection and to align collection opportunities with a problem. In addition to characterizing an adversary's activity in a temporal manner before we task and collect, we also have to identify what our high cadence collection opportunities are. Like Pete was saying, our industry projections show that we'll have an increase in the number of remote sensing satellites. So now we have to ask the question of, how do we look across multiple constellations and identify those opportunities for high cadence collections? Last year, we did a couple proof of concept demonstrations, and we proved that we were able to do these high cadence collections, but the process was time consuming. It was manual. It wasn't tactically responsive. So what we need now is that tool that we can input our collection parameters and our target deck based on that desired sampling rate that I talked about earlier. And then from that, determine the feasibility of collection and deliver it in a way that NGA collection management and tasking tools can ingest quickly as part of a standard workflow. We need to shift our thinking from tasking a single image on a single target to tasking a series of images over hours or days or weeks using those multiple sensors. The capabilities that these new commercial satellites are going to provide to the IC and warfighter bring so much value. And the demand signal is out there, like we talked about, but we also need end-to-end solutions for the challenges that come with this high cadence GEOINT. So, now more than ever with the COVID situation we're in, I think that we can imagine the increased value that all of this commercial imagery is going to provide us and that high cadence collects can offer. So with that said, we welcome the opportunity to hear from industry and from academia on potential solutions and potential use cases. That's all I have for collection management. Keith, over to you.
Thanks, Major Daniel. I appreciate it. We've long talked about the advent of what machines were going to do and AI and ML and how we were going to manage the volumes of pixels that were going to be coming down, and understood that this is about teaming between what we'd be able to do in terms of processing power and software and learning and what we would do with the analyst. And I guess, Vicki, you kind of sit at the crux of all that and making sense of figuring out what are the machines going to do well, what are the humans going to do well, and how are they going to work together towards being able to manage the idea of high cadence GEOINT. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So to start off, why is high cadence GEOINT and commercial imagery so important? And it gets back to NGA's mission, which is to provide timely, relevant, and accurate geospatial intelligence in support of national security. And high cadence GEOINT does that 2 ways. One, it will improve an analyst's ability to develop more thorough patterns of life and help us tell a more complete story. But also, it will make our reporting more timely and shareable, as long as you can get through everything. And these heterogeneous platforms, as Pete was talking about, are a bit of a challenge with automation and making those machines work for the analyst. So at NGA, we're modernizing our IT infrastructure, which means our data flows are getting faster, and this is great. But analysts do have a finite time. They have to answer a question pretty quickly, and so we're always looking for those easy to adopt efficiencies and also end-to-end solutions. Our director, actually, I wanted to read this. Back at 2019 at the GEOINT Symposium, he said, "Our goal is to partner with machines so that you can make best use of the exponential growth in volume and source of data, letting machines do what machines do well and analysts do what analysts do even better, think critically and solve problems." So he's totally behind this. And my comments today are going to focus a bit on monitoring and developing patterns of life, but our director, and just like Ashley said, what we're aiming at is really getting left of X and to find those unknowns, to do that deeper analysis and to have more time to think critically and solve problems. So we have to offload more routine tasks to machines and make the best use of our brains for those complex tasks. And we need those intuitive tools to do all of this. I think it's probably important to level set the analysis cadre at NGA. We have coders and non-coders alike. People have asked me before, what's the primary language NGA is programming in? And we have Python and R, but and really a lot of languages, nothing is too strict on what you can't do. But we do have coders and non-coders. So these tools are going to need to work for people who can't code, as well as people who do code. I just think that's important to note. So let's just go through a little bit about the analysis process. So first, from a monitoring perspective, you would need to know, where and when to task and how often you need to task in order to see what you need to see. But then once we receive that collection, there are two parts of our analysis workflow to consider. There's the analysis side and then the conveyance side. So first, from accessing and creating your data, an analyst would have to prioritize the imagery queue and figure out what the other data sources they would need to look at to more efficiently figure out that story. And to prioritize your imagery queue, you could do it in a couple of ways, but some can be based on automated detection triggers. But just as Pete was saying, those detections across a very diverse set of platforms can be complicated. So I think we're probably going to need some help on that. Also, sometimes it's not the case where you can prioritize your imagery queue that way, but where we can, we need more tools to do that and integrate computer vision and automatic detection into our analysis workflow. And then next, we need faster, more intuitive tools to more easily review and identify and verify the activity we're monitoring or looking to find. So then after we look at the data, we need to produce output. Sometimes it's text output, but I think for a lot of customers, more and more we're moving towards, more structured, interoperable, and consumable data, so that a wide variety of customers, like the warfighter, the policymakers, or even other analysts, can consume our data. And this is where we're getting into conveyance. I think our customers will be asking for more tools so that they themselves can figure out how they want to consume that automated detection data, or how they want to consume our structured observations, so that they can pick out the patterns that are most important to them for their tactical missions. Because when you're conveying your work, you can't necessarily convey it in a way that's going to meet everyone's needs. So I think we need to be thinking about the tools that our customers need beyond just your customers in analysis and NGA. So, outside of analysis, High Cadence GEOINT is going to give us more imaging opportunities. So we should be able to get that collection we need more quickly. And, it'll be great to be able to share it more with partners as well. And automatic retasking, dynamic retasking, however you want to talk about it, like Ashley was talking about, I think is really important in order to get the most out of the additional imaging opportunities. And that's another place where computer vision, automation across heterogeneous platforms, it's going to be challenging, but it's super important. I'm really excited about High Cadence GEOINT and what it can give us. Totally scared about all the imagery that's going to be coming in, but it's awesome. And really what we're focused on now is, how we're going to task it, retask it, consume the data more efficiently to produce timely intelligence, and in some cases, just data. But it is such an unusual time with COVID and everything. We're still plowing forward, even on the unclassified side, working on this. So it's a pretty exciting group to be a part of. I wanted to reiterate what everyone has said. Our agency really values our partnership with NRO, with industry, with academia, and this team. all together has been partnering with a number of groups to make progress on all these collective ideas and against these challenges. That's it from me, Keith.
Thanks so much, Vicki. You know, Dave, having worked in source myself, I used to say that I never met a source I didn't like, right? That the deal was, well, I want to have as many things in my kit bag as possible to service the demands that come into the agency from the entire spectrum of customers. And so really at the end of the day, you know, you're in that business of making Vicki's life harder, right? Of being able to provide as much as she can get as fast as you can get it to her, and to create the broadest set of opportunities for her to have the opportunity to integrate in support of her customers. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and your perspective?
Absolutely, Keith, and thank you very much. I hope to make Vicki's life harder, but also easier at the same time. So I'll hopefully describe that a little bit today. I did want to take a step back for a second and talk about the next decade of GEOINT. That's what this was headlined as, and it's incredibly exciting. And so I think we should just take a moment to discuss what's happening in this discipline and in this collection arena. We are seeing a paradigm shift. I think we always are, but this one feels even more shifty. And we're moving from what used to be in secrecy to ubiquitous observation around the world. We're talking about swimming in data abundance instead of starving in scarcity for the first time. We're talking about orienting our decision makers to action using a lot of sources as opposed to making single observations on one source, right? And we're also talking about harnessing commercial innovation instead of using commercial as just one way to augment what we've been doing in the past. And so all of those factors combine to a pretty exciting and interesting time. My group tracks and trends the market. It's one of the things we do. And so just some numbers to throw out there. We're actively tracking 91 remote sensing constellations around the world. Those aren't satellites, those are constellations. Some of those constellations are 1 or 2 satellites, but others are in the 3, 4, 500 range in aspiration. Half of those constellations have satellites on orbit. The other half are still paper constellations that are largely funded but not yet launched. But there's a lot coming. We're also tracking about 6,500 different unique data offerings and services that are available in the market. Some of those are built around providing imagery and imagery-derived information, but others are completely new and never came from satellite imagery or satellite collection to begin with. And so that kit bag gets bigger and bigger and bigger and more unique and diverse over time. Why are we talking high cadence today? I loved what everybody else already said. I'll put another point on it. The fact of great power competition certainly requires us to deliver geospatial answers with more precision, accuracy, and speed than we've ever done before. And when you talk about speed, we need high cadence information in order to generate the speed of our answers. And so we expect there to be enough satellites and services available to us in the commercial market, in addition to in the DoD and IC arenas. But specifically commercially, since that's where I sit, we're expecting the companies to begin to aggregate amongst themselves their data offerings. Certainly before any one constellation is fully proliferated and on orbit, pieces and parts of multiple constellations can be providing imagery and data services. And so we're looking for those analytics companies and those aggregators to start combining things and offering more cadence to us as a service. Again, a little bit complementing and setting up the High Cadence GEOINT vision that you just heard. My group is working with analytics companies and other imagery providers to go ahead and start delivering us the resulting observations in a structured way so they can ingest directly into our data stores. And so this stops delivering mountains of imagery to our analysts and can begin delivering a structured data stream directly into their activity-based intelligence tools and other time series tools and services, so that they can build those pattern of life. They can build the context around locations well in advance of having to initiate a high cadence GEOINT collection effect, right? So giving us that deeper understanding throughout the cycle. So one thing that we are doing, I wanted to provide a preview, is we certainly have been experimenting over the last 2 years with buying, I would say, dozens of different analytic services, testing them out to see how they work in our against our mission use cases and in our infrastructure with our analysts and their workflows. And we have we've learned quite a bit in the resulting couple of years. So we're going to scale up a little bit and jump into procuring some of those observations as a service to give us at least daily monitoring of many locations around the world for economic monitoring missions. We'll be looking at economic infrastructure, facilities such as POL storage tanks, ports, shipping container staging areas, airfields, vehicle manufacturing plants, all these areas that can give us indicators of the pattern of life of economic activity around the world. And we'll be asking the companies to deliver us structured observations as opposed to images. So we'll be going out on the GSA schedule within weeks to begin procuring some of that activity for our analysts and customers around the world. Almost the same way that we have commercial suppliers that are automating and producing map features off of imagery that we then take and turn into finished maps, charts, and products for navigation. We expect to have a ready supply of commercial observations about these facilities, about equipment, and about vehicles that we can take directly into analytic production as well. So I'm excited about that, and I hope you are too. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm pretty excited as I've been previewing the questions that are coming in. We've got an educated audience who's gonna really add to the discussion that you all have provided so far. So the first question, kind of mostly for Pete, Dave, others might have an opinion. It's an interesting question. So it gets to the point of, look, specifically to what you described, Dave, this remarkable riches in terms of potential providers. The question, Pete, is, will you be able to have a dynamic enough process, right, to be able to be continually evaluating new players as they come on the scene and being able to adjust your contracting practices sort of at the speed of the startup economy as these new space companies emerge?
Yeah, that is a great question. That is certainly something that we're working through and endeavoring to meet. I'd say a couple things. One, the acquisition strategy that we're working to put in place is absolutely going to be iterative. As our needs change, as the industry's capabilities change and evolve and grow, certainly we intend to be able to take advantage of them. And leverage them. But of course, it's not just about buying everything that's available on the market either, right? We need to make sure that it does provide value against our mission needs, and that does take a little bit of discipline in the process. So the trick is to balance those. Obviously having a contract strategy and an acquisition strategy that can leverage new capabilities where they bring to bear. But of course, we don't just want to throw everything that's available to sale into the system either. So that gets into the more deliberate process to make sure that we can evaluate and make sure there's a true mission utility there. And those are things that we're actively working hand in hand with Dave groups on specifically. So I guess that's how I'd answer that question.
Dave, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. If I can jump in on the services side and maybe non-traditional data providers, we are working with our acquisition organizations to pre-approve and constantly evaluate and validate multiple vendors and their service offerings so that we can have them on multi-vendor contracts where there are pools and we can accept trusted services in a timely fashion. This is a little bit running with scissors from an acquisition standpoint, but I guess we're putting on our armor and going for it. So this is one of the only ways that we can actually move with speed to get the best capabilities in the market to the users that need them. At the same time, we are constantly trying to stay on top of the evaluation of new imagery providers to understand the quality and accuracy of the imagery that they provide and inform Pete's group. And of course, with the NRO helping us make those evaluations possible, inform them as to the mission utility of each provider, the quality of their data, the accuracy that they can deliver. And that's not only important for the imagery that's being provided, but all the downstream automated production services and other analytics that those companies might impact. We need to understand the quality of the original data coming off the sensors in order to really trust it. So we're constantly working with the boom and imagery providers to try to get ahead of that.
Well, and thanks for addressing it end to end. Between the two of you, of course, that's the idea, is that you're going to cover it end to end. But we do have a tradition, certainly in the government, and you can even see it happen in the commercial world, where there gets to be this fixation on the commodity on orbit, the tremendous expense, the challenge of getting it up there, maintaining it, and often the back end where things have to end up being delivered to the analyst, delivered to customers, is a trailing issue. And to see these things happening in parallel, in some ways, almost for the first time in a real way, is pretty exciting. I love the next question. Will NGA or NRO consider embedding government collection managers with commercial companies, especially given the emphasis on unclassified operations? So I think it's a fantastic question. I don't know who'd like to take a crack at it.
So I'll just maybe jump in to begin and say, while certainly we don't provide the collection managers, in a general sense, that is not our current philosophy. Our current philosophy is to use more of an API-based mechanism to facilitate exchange of information, both our orders and tasks and the receipt of imagery. Obviously we want to make that as efficient and lightweight as possible, and that's something we're actively working on. In fact, we have a number of programs and demonstrations underway to do just that. But no, none of them currently involved actually embedding collection managers into the process. But I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in.
I'll briefly say I visited some of the commercial collection centers, and it's amazing how they sort of leapfrogged a lot of technology, and they have a high degree of automation in their collection management. And so we almost don't want to send government bodies in to slow down what they're able to do in collection already. I think the companies would appreciate the API-based tasking needs, flying in at the speed of light and running the algorithms on their side. Over.
Major Daniel, do you want to add something to that?
No, I was going to say, something similar. It's certainly an interesting idea. Our whole intent is just to make something that's a very user-friendly, streamlined process from the government perspective, stuff that's already integrated into our workflows. And like Dave said, certainly wouldn't want to inhibit any of the creativity that comes from industry and how they do things.
So, Vicki, there's a question specifically for you. Dave touched on this to a certain extent. We've outsourced MC and G production for as long as I can remember, certainly. And the question here is, well, if we're able in the past to outsource the production of the mapping, the charting type things, could we envision outsourcing to some of these analytic companies some mission pieces, some mission sets? of the analytic demand. Could you envision attempting that at some point?
So as an analyst, I'm pretty much, in the tactical level, and I'm not necessarily in all the conversations higher up, but there has been that discussion at NGA as well, especially with our national focus needing to be pushed towards some of our really high priority national security needs. Are there some parts of our mission that, could be outsourced that would be still maintain the health of the data streams as well and be reliable and dependable for our customers? So I know those discussions are happening at NGA, but I don't know what level where we're at with that.
I appreciate that. So the question here, Pete, has the NRO received permission to contract with international providers? I think it talks here about thinking about in the past when I'll sort of conflate two questions here. When I'll editorialize, when the United States made some questionable policy decisions that hampered our ability to have commercial synthetic aperture radar. And we worked very closely at NGA with the Canadians and the Germans and the Italians. And so now, while we do see some pretty exciting things happening in the U.S. in terms of synthetic aperture radar, but this goes beyond that. The question is, can you see yourself contracting on behalf of meeting NGA requirements going out to non-U.S. companies?
I guess the way I'd like to answer that is saying and referring back to national policy NSPD 27 specifically that outlines, I'll say, an emphasis on the U.S. domestic commercial remote sensing industry base, and so where and as those capabilities and those phenomenologies are able to be satisfied by U.S. companies, we will look there first to satisfy that. And that's certainly the case in the EO side as we're moving forward to satisfy electro-optical collection requirements.
This is interesting, Vicki. I think you might want to touch on this, and perhaps others. It says, hey, again, paraphrasing, perhaps ABI has been overcome by events. We've started to look at machine learning and AI efforts. And did the tradecraft of ABI get left behind as we started looking at these other things?
No, not at all. Pattern of lights is a big piece of ABI. I think we always go through these trends of buzzwords, but when your automation can fit into ABI, it's creating data streams that you can use in order to get a better understanding of what's going on. So definitely ABI is not lost. If anything, the whole concept of using all the data in order to answer a question is still very, very much alive. And all these new data streams will be giving us just more information to work with in order to better do activity-based intelligence.
So I think this next question maybe starts with Dave, and it might pull in Pete as well. It appears that Dave's group is looking at things beyond just imagery, and looking at things that Pete has done with respect to Hawkeye 360 and High Spec. Will additional capabilities beyond just traditional imagery be integrated into enhanced view follow-on? Are there requirements being developed for some of these other phenomenologies going forward?
I'll start by saying the enhanced view follow-on requirements are validated and over to the NRO. So they are doing their best to look at what is currently proven in the market to satisfy our validated needs. And I'll let Pete expound upon that as he desires. As far as what's next, we are seeing an awful lot of capability coming from commercial vendors as they develop and push the boundaries of what's possible in the remote sensing market and the analytics market and non-traditional data. And so my group is in the early stages of drafting a statement of capabilities for other types of commercial services, those that probably won't come from the electro-optical follow-on. So, and I know Pete is waiting with bated breath for that set of validated requirements to come across, because it means you can go out and buy even more better data. But we certainly have experienced that there's more out there in the market than we had a history of understanding, and more than we've captured in current requirements. And so that's a big amount of work for us to do going forward.
Yeah, thanks. I guess what I would add is that we certainly see the tremendous benefit of other phenomenologies beyond electro-optical out there. In fact, that was the reason that we awarded a couple of integration study contracts specifically with Capella and Hawkeye 360. Not necessarily to purchase the data at scale, because it was a little premature for that, but really because we saw that future out there, we wanted to make sure that our architecture and our interface could support that data. The way you order SAR data or certainly RF data is different than the nuances of how you ask for electro-optical synoptic collection, and so we wanted to make sure that we were to a degree future-proof to that end. So obviously we're really excited about those phenomenologies, and we certainly see the tremendous power of it, and we are doing everything we can to make sure that we are prepared. So when those requirements do come and come at scale, we're well positioned to satisfy them as an organization as a whole. And I'll say just generally that philosophy of buying commercially everywhere we can doesn't just hold for electro-optical collection. I think that's true across the phenomenologies. So it is certainly a tremendously exciting future out there.
So I think this next question is interesting to me. So this person clearly wanted to make sure that Vicki's not the only one on the hook for how things change, and in fact that there's clearly going to have to be change in the source strategies tradecraft. So first, I'll embarrass you, Major Daniel, because I think someone who cares about you is on the line and has said that you are off to a great start at NGA, and we hope you will be there for many years. So it's up to you to sort of hunt down within your family or friends who chimed in today. But now that I've sufficiently embarrassed you, how do you contemplate changes to the tradecraft of source strategists? How are they going to manage? Are they going to become just brokers, or are they still going to have a role in thinking through the process, trying to figure out how to allocate requirements? And also, not unlike Vicki's challenge, what can the machines do well? What can the people do well? And from a source perspective.
Absolutely. First of all, I will certainly hunt down whoever's saying nice things about me. I have my suspicions, and we'll reach out to them later. But with respect to the source strategy analysts out there, they're going to be more important than ever when it comes to high cadence GEOINT, because like I talked about, they're going to be the start of this process, and we're going to have to reimagine what their tradecraft looks like. And instead of thinking, as single targets, single images, now they're going to have this new complex challenge where they're going to have to look at a target across days or weeks or months, maybe even a longer period of time, and be able to come up with ways that we're able to collect against those targets, again, using those multiple providers that Pete talked about. So really, it's going to be a whole new challenge. And, I talked briefly about some of the considerations with things like determining sampling rates. How frequently do we need to collect on a specific type of target in order to answer those intel questions that we have? And there's no doubt about that. The source strategy analysts are going to be a crucial part of that. We've brought several folks from NGA onto our team. I failed to mention this earlier, but we actually have roughly 40 or so people across the agency who, in some way or another, are providing us feedback and a lot of information on how we can do this. How do we do high cadence GEOINT, including 3 or 4 SSAs who are in all of our meetings and having a tremendous amount of influence in how we adopt and evolve the tradecraft.
If I could weigh in on that, Keith?
Please.
Okay. Yeah, Ashley's spot on. And I just wanted to add, people who know me know I like to use food analogies for almost everything. So I did want to say, our source strategists have been trained for years to be pretty good sous chefs, and they use a limited set of ingredients to delight their customers. over and over again. And I think what we're doing in our job, especially with commercial, is to provide them an entirely new set of ingredients and spices from which to build menus. So they really are going to have to grow up into top chefs and run their own kitchens and invent new recipes that will then take their customer to a new level with what they're able to solve analytically. Over.
Yeah, just one other thing to add. I've been at NGA for 16 years in a couple of different accounts, and the places where we've made the most progress is where Source has been super integrated with our analysis mission, because they understand exactly what we're trying to accomplish. They understand the problem, and then they help you solve it. So there's a lot of tradecraft to learn on the analysis side, but also on the Source side, we've been coining terms left and right. One is temporal tradecraft, another is resolution tradecraft. What Ashley described, I thought was, really, really thorough. Like, there's just a whole ton that people are going to have to learn so that they can bring their expertise to the problem, and people with diverse perspectives can help solve it because, national security, it's important.
So because we are talking about the future, I'm going to pose this question hypothetically because it is politically charged, and I bear some scars associated with having dabbled in this before. When NGA and other agencies get involved in things that are deemed multi-int, while that is the way that problems are solved in the intelligence community, sometimes can be punished for getting outside of one's lane. So just hypothetically, as we think about the next decade of GEOINT, the question is about integrating emerging RF constellations and how you might contemplate working with those providers and how that might be different than working with the commercial data providers, the imagery providers who we've traditionally been engaged with.
So a lot of data can be classified as quote unquote geospatial data because it offers you information about a place. That can be RF information, that could be human geography information, it could be remotely sensitive observation. When it comes to these new emerging remote sensing opportunities, we are working with our partners hand in hand so that we don't, as one agency, go out on a limb alone and try to take up the mantle of something like RF collection. So we're definitely working with NSA and NRO on how that will work. And our overseers are ensuring that we do so. They want one government entity to be coordinating and not 4 government entities to be buying the same thing. So I think we're all acting responsibly, but it is causing us to slow down a little bit. But that's the important step, is to work as a partnership and work in teams to do it right. Over.
So I think we've got time. This is an interesting final question, perhaps, that sort of everybody might have something to say about it. It is about personnel, right? Who are the people? What's the training? Pete, I know there's a long lineage of people buying commercial imagery that came before you at the NRO, right? So, right, where do people learn as we make these pretty significant sea changes, if you will, in the intelligence community and here within the GEOINT community? What types of skill sets are going to have to change, right? The difference between what a source strategist is doing and an analyst, the things that Dave and you and your folks are going to be doing, as you said, while you're evaluating sources, isn't going to happen without total integration with what Pete's doing. So this just isn't business as usual. So what's just your perspective as we go into the last couple minutes here, individually, on the demands on the people, on the training, on the tradecraft, on the education, and on the way forward? Pete, you want to start?
Absolutely. And thanks for asking that question. As you know, we on the government side at the National Reconnaissance Office are always recruiting more individuals, especially those with STEM backgrounds. because that really has been a key, frankly, a key contributor to our success. I have to say I'm proud to be able to work with some of the most brilliant people, not only just within my agency, but partner agencies like NGA that I've had the, I'm just really thankful for that opportunity. In terms of expertise, obviously STEM is a big one. We have to understand what we're buying and why and how it's used, understand the science and the satellites and those sort of things. And that's true across everything that we buy. As much as we are buying commercial imagery, obviously those part some unique demands and disciplines as well. Frankly, and especially on the business side, really understanding what drives the commercial sector, how we fit in and become not just the big government, the 800-pound gorilla, but also a smart consumer. Understand what drives them and how to make them and ensure that they're successful as a commercial company as well, providing GEOINT to the entirety of their customer base. So I think that's probably the biggest new item is understanding how those commercial companies work, what they can bring to bear in areas and using technologies and at a pace that oftentimes is different than what we've traditionally done. And then just doubling down on, of course, the longstanding acquisition expertise and contracting expertise that we've had at the NRO and working very closely with our mission partners to handle the intelligence missions and understand the use cases so we can meet those needs.
I'll talk from the analysis perspective. You can't just exploit this imagery in the same way we've done in the past because you can't do that. And it's difficult to write tradecraft before the tools are invented. So what's the common, you're flying the plane as you're building it or something. We're doing that. But one thing that NGA, I think, has excelled at and focused on in the past is critical thinking skills. As an analyst, you have to be able to really dive deep into data, so data science skills as well, but really focus on figuring out what you're looking at and, what other things could be explaining it. So, and within analysis, we have a Tradecraft and technology group, which has focused a lot on trying to make sure that our college is ready for the new skills that are going to be needed. There has been a little bit of a focus on data science skills, but I think the critical thinking skills from a vetting and validation perspective, from just making sure that you're giving an unbiased answer to people who need to be able to make decisions, that's really been a good focus from NGA, and we're just going to keep on doing it.
Thanks, Major Daniel.
Yeah, this is a really great question. So Pete and Vicki answered a lot of it. One of the big things I wrote down was the data scientists and the engineers. We talked quite a bit about the tasking process. We talked about the analytics. We didn't talk about all the pipelines in between and a lot of the challenges that we face. So, people that can really help answer those problems. But beyond that, we have so much experience and so many extraordinary people at NGA. I'm a big believer in let's bring in the new and young people, and we've done a lot of outreach as part of the High Cadence GEOINT team. We've talked with young airmen, that have been in the military for 2 years about some of this, and they always come to us with the best ideas for how can we use High Cadence GEOINT, and, did you think of this? Did you think of that? So in addition to our extraordinarily experienced team and the need for the data scientists and the engineers to help us figure out those pipelines, I say let's bring in our amazing young people and really help us get outside of our bubble and think creatively, and think about the future in ways that maybe those of us who have been around a little while don't always think of.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, I was going to mention two things. One, NGA is full of very high-end professionals who have worked a lot of these missions for many years. And because they're professionals, they consider tradecraft development a fundamental part of life. It's never ending, and they are excited to learn how to apply themselves and their expertise to new missions and new technologies and really deliver the best for the user. That national security and what NGA does for policymakers, warfighters, and first responders is really a passion area for most of our employees. So they're happy to bring a better version of their tradecraft to the fight. And then I have to also completely agree with Ashley about young people. We have a very vibrant intern program at NGA. The interns are amazing. Universities are graduating people. I don't think you can get a degree now without some ability to understand data and statistics. So they're graduating people that are just so talented, and we're taking as much advantage of that as possible.
Well, thank you all. I really enjoyed the conversation today. Adam can tell us how many people watched and how many people watched the recording. But it was certainly worth it, I think, for all of us to get together and have the conversation. I appreciate you all taking the time to share this with those who are outside and want a glimpse inside of what's going on in the government to inform decisions they're making, whether it's in industry or academia or even other parts of the government. So thanks to you all, and back to you, Adam.
Yeah, thank you all of you for participating. This is a great panel. We had quite a bit of listeners, a lot of folks with questions, and it was a great session. So I'm going to end that. For everybody listening, thanks for participating in the Geospatial Frontier, watching Project Geospatial, and you'll be able to see the recorded version of this within 24 hours. So starting tomorrow, this will be up online, YouTube, Twitch, and our website, Geospatial Frontier, and projectgeospatial.com. With that said, I'm going to end the session right there, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks, everybody, for listening.